Hello, everyone. What we want to do today is to talk to you about or give you an outline of what we are planning for your multi-district pets, all the multi-district pets in Zone 32. And there's three parts to this. And the first part is we call diagnose. About a week before the pets session, we are going to send out a club worksheet to each of the club presidents-elect, giving them information specific to their club. One of the key aspects of what we're trying to do here is recognize that every single club is different and every single club has different membership needs. So we're going to try to help them based on their membership history to diagnose what are the key opportunities for that club for growth. Second, we want to help them build on those opportunities, and we're going to use a study that we recently completed on 5 attributes of growing clubs. And in fact, I'm going to talk about those 2 aspects in a lot of detail in terms of the next 30 minutes or so, going through this outline of what we're planning to do for pets. And then, of course, step 3 is to act, to understand what your unique situation is in your club and what are the opportunities based on the 5 attributes of growing clubs that will most impact your club for membership growth in the coming year. So let's get started. First, I want to do a few definitions. And the definitions I want to go through are attrition and attraction. Well, attrition is simply the percentage of members leaving your club each year. Attraction is the percentage of new members joining your club each year. Now, we like to use the terms attrition and attraction because they are directly relatable to each other and allows us to compare one against the other. And we can understand whether a club is growing or declining in membership. In other words, to grow, attraction must exceed attrition. Now, oftentimes we'll hear the term retention. That's a common term that we hear in Rotary. Retention is simply 100% minus attrition. We prefer to use the term attrition because it, like I said, it's directly relatable to attraction. Now, I mentioned before, each of our club presidents-elect are going to receive a goal-setting worksheet. And we're still working on that. We'll be sending that out to many of the district governors in the coming weeks, just for their information so that they can see what the worksheets look like. And on those worksheets, well, these are some of the things that are going to be included. First of all, we're going to give them information about their club's history. Second, we're going to show them a bit about their annual attrition rate, their annual attraction rate, and their net growth rate. And there's a number of other things we're going to include on there too as well. And I'll talk about those in the coming slides. So let's continue here. Before I go into that though, I want to talk about some common patterns that we typically see when we look at clubs across our zone, in fact, across just about every zone. And here what I'm doing is I'm plotting attraction rate on the y-axis versus attrition rate on the x-axis. And the first area I want to highlight are clubs with a high attraction and low attrition rate. So these are clubs that are growing. These are clubs with a growth culture. Now, if we look across our zone, about 10 to 15% of our clubs fall into that growth culture quadrant. On the other corner, we have low attraction and high attrition, and we call that the danger zone. So these are clubs that are declining in membership 10 to 20% a year. And unless something changes relatively soon, well, the outcome isn't going to be very good. And unfortunately, about 20 to 25% of our clubs right now fall into that category. But most of the clubs most of the clubs fall somewhere in between. And so let me talk about a couple of the different quadrants in that area. If the club has low attrition and low attraction, well, we're going to call that a club that's stuck in place. So this is a club that, well, people aren't leaving, but they're really not able to attract new members. So every year, the average age of that club goes up by about 1 year. Now, oftentimes these clubs are very active. They have great projects, but obviously something has to change because we can't continue to do that forever. So their opportunity really is more around attraction. So now let's go to the next one, and that one is the high attraction, high attrition quadrant, and those clubs have high turnover. So in this case, what we're seeing is, unfortunately, we're seeing a revolving door. Members are coming in, but they're not getting what they expected, and then they're leaving. But now if you look at both of these examples, both of these clubs appear to have steady membership, but they have very different issues that they need to address. And then in the middle, we have clubs which we'll call a fragile balance. And these are clubs that have probably about a 10 to 15% attrition and attraction rate. And they're holding their own, and they can go either way. So next thing we want to talk about is, well, how do we, what are the numbers with attraction and attrition that we want to compare to? And maybe what are some of the targets? So let's start with, how do you compare? When we look across Rotary International, the average attrition rate is about 14%. And of course, the attraction rate is very close to 14% as well. We have been at 1.2 million people, Rotarians, for about 20 years. So that's how it should be. So it's about 14%. The range in our districts for attrition ranges from 11 to 20%, and for attraction, somewhere between 10 and 15% on average. Of course, we've been declining slightly every year, so our attrition rates are a little bit higher than our attraction rates. But more importantly, what are some of the targets that we should be setting as clubs for attrition and attraction? For attrition, really, if your club's attrition rate is greater than 15%, that needs attention. We need to do something about that, because it's very, very difficult to attract a higher number of members than that, and we really do need to reduce that. An optimal number, based on our experience, is somewhere around 10%, maybe 8 to 10%. It's hard to get much better than that on a sustained basis, because we're a membership organization in the United States, and life happens. Things happen. Some things are related to, people moving, death, health, business changes, personal changes. That always ends up around 8 to 10%. So it's really hard to get any lower than that. And so another way to think about that is, well, we really need to probably replace 10% of our club every year just to break even. So if you had a club of 50 members, for example, well, that's 5 members. We need to replace them every single year. And as far as an attraction rate is concerned, we want our attraction rate to be about 5% greater than our attrition rate. If we can get to that, that's a 5% growth rate. Most clubs would be really, really happy with that. That's a nice target to set for a club. an attraction rate about 5% higher. Now, one of the things that we do in the club worksheet that we're going to send out is we're going to provide a little calculation for them on how to figure out exactly how many new members they would need to add based on their current attrition rate and the like. And I'm not going to go through that in detail today, but when we do the pets, we will. Now, the other point which I made at the beginning of the talk is, well, we need to think about what's the most important problem we need to solve as a club. Is it attrition? If it's high attrition and our rates exceed 15%, yeah, we need to focus on reducing that attrition rate. Is it attraction? Is it low attraction? Is our attraction rate lower than our attrition rate? So we're actually declining in membership every year. So I'll let you in on a secret. About 45% of the clubs that we looked at across our zone fell in that low attraction area. So by far, when we look at all these different areas, that was the one where we see, the most opportunity. With the high attrition, it's more like 15 to 20%. And then the third one here is both. Well, if we have both, we have high attrition and low attraction. And as I mentioned before, there's about 20 to 25% clubs that fall into that category. And then finally, there's the neither category. And these are clubs that are growing, but we can't sit still. We can never sit still. We need to build on our growth culture and strategies. And about 10 to 15% of our clubs fall into that category. So now the next step is, okay, we know what the most important problem is we need to solve. All right, well, how do we focus on it? What are some of the things to think about or actions that we could take to address this opportunity? So if your issue is high attraction, then, low attraction. No, if your issue is high attraction, that's great. If your issue is low attraction, well, the first thing we want to do is, it's probably not to ask more people to join our club. Probably the first thing we want to do is to take a look and think and look in the mirror and say, is our club attractive to who we're trying to attract? Is there something about our club culture that's making it difficult for us to attract people? Are we active in our community? Are we visible in our community? Now, one of the things to think about with that is, one of the tools we could use for that, which is very effective, is the Rotary Club Health Check that's offered by Rotary International. Now, if our opportunity is high attrition and we want to try to lower our attrition, same thing. Well, is there something about our club culture that's causing this revolving door syndrome? And let's understand what that is, and let's address that. And it's probably something to do with member engagement. So member engagement might be our primary focus. Or, is it some combination of both? Now, this is a nice lead-in to what I want to talk about for the second half of the talk, which is the study we did on identifying attributes of growing clubs. And the way we did this study was we looked at clubs that grew appreciably in the 2020-21 Rotary year. In other words, the year during the pandemic. Now, this was a very difficult year for Rotary growth. And these clubs used the pandemic as an opportunity for growth. They didn't use it as an excuse. So what we did was we looked across our 2,100 clubs across zones 28 and 32, and we found every single club that had greater than a 5 net growth in membership. And that came out to be somewhere between 90 and 100 clubs that we could survey. And we sent out an 11-question survey to these presidents, and we got about a 60% response rate. So we had 55 past presidents respond. And one of the things that, the questions that we used, especially the most important question we asked these past presidents was, in your opinion, what were the 3 top reasons why you think your club grew in membership? So it was an open-ended question, and we let them give us their candid answers. And then we looked at those answers, and then we tried to identify common attributes. And the thing that surprised us was how easy it was for us to identify what these common attributes were. And all of these clubs gave multiple examples of multiple attributes in their survey responses. And here's what the 5 attributes were. The first one was strong leadership. These clubs, it was very clear that these presidents and their boards had strong leadership, which led to number 2, which they had clear membership goals and a growth plan. These clubs were also very active in their local communities. They were visible in their local communities, and they had active, intentional member engagement. 5 attributes. It's not rocket science. If you look at that, you've probably heard about a number of those in the past. But what we did that was a little different this time was we literally talked to 55 clubs that had actually grown and took their combined knowledge and put together this, basically these different attributes. So let's go through them one by one. So the first one was leadership. Now, in a nutshell, if you wanted to summarize what these presidents talked to us about leadership, it really was about servant leadership. And these clubs, when we looked at their leadership, they had consistency, they had continuity, they had collaboration, and they had strong communication. Now, in addition to the surveys that we did, we also did interviews of 7 of these past club presidents of these clubs that had grown. And for most of the rest of this presentation, you're not going to hear that much from me anymore. You're going to hear from them. So let's get started. Let's hear about what these club presidents talked about when it came to leadership.
Leadership involves sort of having a vision or embracing a vision and moving your club and the members towards pursuing that vision in a way that makes them feel important and a part of the process.
The leadership is a little bit different, I think, in Rotary than it may be somewhere else. It certainly has to be distributed.
Leadership is all about getting people to say, yes, I will own some specific result, so that they are then leading a particular effort.
It's not my club, it's not the president's club, it's the members' club.
Because of COVID, we have to reimagine everything that we do.
How do you bring people from where they are to a new place? That's the kind of leadership I think we have to have in Rotary.
It's really important in order to do that, that you be able to listen and to be fluid with what's going on with other people in your community.
And we're here for the community. So just constantly thinking about that, to me, that's what leadership meant to me.
The second attribute is developing a goal and a growth plan. So yes, it is about setting a goal, but it's also about putting together a plan for growth. Now, we did ask some follow-up questions in the survey, and it was very clear from the responses to these that these clubs had clear goals and a plan. 88% of these clubs stated that membership growth was a top priority during the pandemic year. 83% of them uploaded their membership goals into Rotary Club Central. And 85% of them had a club membership committee with multiple members. And active attraction by members was a key strategy. It included members asking friends and colleagues, active follow-up with prospects, consistent messaging to club members that it was their job to identify people in their community with a heart for service that could really be great Rotarians and invite them again. And then a few of the clubs really grew by starting satellite clubs with alternate experiences. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So now let's hear some more about goals and plans from some of these club presidents.
We made membership a priority during the pandemic year because it happened to coincide with our centennial.
Membership was a priority to me before I knew we were going to be having a pandemic throughout our entire year.
And 3 years ago, we established 4 strategic goals for that centennial, and one of them was to grow membership in our club.
Equity and diversity was really an important aspect of that.
We wanted to diversify our club. Our club was aging like many clubs. We wanted to inject some youth into our membership and attract new younger members into our club.
One of our cultural goals for the year was to be open to every person, opportunity, and idea.
I wanted to make sure that we created a club that people would want to join, people would want to remain in.
We also wanted to improve the gender balance in our club.
Identify very specific people and put them in very specific roles on the membership committee.
I asked members, can you please think about people in your community that you know, that you think might be good Rotarians, and don't just think about it, ask them to join.
As long as you're making plans to make sure that your membership growth happens, I think it will.
Okay, well, the third attribute is that these clubs were active in their local community. They had many events and service projects. So they were often monthly and or ongoing. We never heard the story, well, we had one big project. They were having continuous projects throughout the year. They would search out areas for immediate need. A number of them talked about unique opportunities for service due to COVID. They partnered with other civic groups. They took diversity, equity, and inclusion to heart. They identified projects that would appeal to prospective members. And they had a variety of projects for members to choose from. And another important point is, as you can see on the slide, 2/3 of these clubs indicated to us that they held events that were targeted at new member attraction. Yes, having many service projects is the foundation if we're going to be attractive to people in our community with a heart for service. So we have to have that. That's the foundation. But there's more than that. It's very clear that these clubs did that, and they had a plan on how to grow their club by attracting people to service projects and events, in addition to just doing the service projects on their own. So as you'll see from these clips, these clubs didn't stop moving during the pandemic.
The pandemic provided a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to connect with people all over the world.
One of the keys to our success in terms of membership, and all of these things are interrelated, was our ability to partner with some of the other community organizations and not-for-profits.
We took the lead on managing the volunteer sign-up sheets for the mass vaccination clinics that were happening in our community.
We started an Afghan refugee resettlement program, and we actually got our first family last night.
We continued some things that we had been doing. We'd been serving at a local a soup kitchen, Bristol Lodge, for going on 30 years, and we didn't stop that.
We invited guests to our events, both our fundraisers as well as our hands-on community service projects. of which there were many. I think it was 22 events that we had in spite of the pandemic.
I would say on average, we had at least 5 partners, including Rotary, on each of the projects that we embraced.
We have about 50 volunteers, and 2 of them just recently became Rotary members.
The group that we work with in Haiti, we were able to Zoom with them. So in a different way, we were able to connect with the service projects that we were already engaged in other countries.
During the pandemic, we found different ways to deliver food and support that community in need.
That more awareness in the community of Rotary stepping up and being involved in what's going on with our club was great.
The fourth attribute is being visible in your community, being seen. So yes, we're doing the service projects and people in our community know about them. Now, we've got a whole number of different responses in terms of how clubs did this, with respect to strong public image. But by far the most prevalent response was the use of social media. Well, here are some examples from our club presidents.
We're entirely willing to tell people what we've been doing and invite them to join us and invite them again. So everything we do is open to anybody who wants to get involved.
We wanted to get an article and a picture for everything we did. And there were people very, very impressed with what we did, reaching out to us, interested in joining or at least inquiring about membership, I think as a result of that too.
As we were doing these projects, we were making lots of posts every week.
We did a PSA with a local radio TV station. That had a big impact. We put posters up around town, primarily letting people know about the program, not so much to raise money.
We were using ambassadors in the community. Where we live, we have a world famous theater, and so we have lots of relatively famous people that live in Stratford. We got them to sort of become our mask ambassadors.
So our members would post and repost, and we'd get remarks and comments and likes.
We've also added some new members who have particular social media expertise and design expertise, and they've really elevated our social media game, if you will, and we're not bashful.
So I think it was important that we were active in social media for the programs, not necessarily just for Duxbury Rotary.
We're just doing what Rotary has suggested we do and what most organizations are encouraged to do, which is to tell the stories that you have through all the channels that you can muster as often as you want, through as many different voices as you have.
The fifth attribute is active, intentional member engagement. We heard these stories again and again. These clubs did not stop when the pandemic hit. They just switched from live meetings to virtual meetings the next week. And we heard stories about, well, yes, we had Zoom meetings, but we also met in the park and we did service projects. But the key thing was we kept everybody involved in our club throughout the year. We heard stories about strong meeting programs, clubs that took advantage of the fact that it was a virtual world and they could invite speakers from anywhere in the world. The words friendly, fun, inclusive came up again and again in the survey responses. And when we looked at when clubs brought in new members, they made sure that those new members were engaged right away. And there were many different examples of that, and you'll hear one of them in the video. And also engaging not just the new members, but all the members in their committees and the service projects, and recognizing them for the contributions that they were making. So again, let's hear a little bit more from our club presidents about engagement.
And nobody wants to come to a dull party. So the other thing I wanted to do was make sure that we focused on fun.
every month I had a Zoom call, which later became an in-person meeting once a month with those new members.
My goal for speakers was to have those who spoke to be entertaining, educational, and informative.
They've sort of formed their own little fellowship amongst themselves. They're now friends and they go out and have coffees together. And when we do finally get to meet in person, they're going to already know, 12 other people in the club.
We made sure they got engaged in their area of interest. And so we made that a priority. And I'd say that was our primary strategy.
I mean, we were very locked down in our community, but we could go for walks. So what we did was to use the focus of the environment to get together in small groups.
We're in the midst of completing our second tree sale, and it was fantastic last year because it was an opportunity to get outside together with each other, meet more members of our own community, and do something good.
We're going to walk along the lakeshore, and we bought garbage bags and gloves and pickers, and we went out, we wore Rotary gear, we took photographs, and we put it on social media.
Invite everybody to get involved with anything that's interesting to them, as much or as little as they want. And when they do, welcome them warmly. And if they don't, invite them again to something else, because the way to get involved with Rotary is to get involved with Rotary.
So those were the 5 attributes of successful clubs that we identified, and literally 90 to 95% of the responses that we got fell into one of those 5 categories. That was how amazing it was, and how clear it was that these were the things that clubs were using, that were helping them to grow. Now we have one more example here. This is an example of a club starting an alternate experience, and in this case it's a satellite club, and it's a wonderful example of a club that put it all together last year. The Rotary Club of Chinatown in New York City grew by engaging their community in a compelling and innovative way, attracting people who never ever saw themselves in Rotary, and bringing a new energy and vitality to the club. So let's hear from Taylor about this amazing story.
One of the things that really made a difference was the institution of satellite clubs, because it gave us the ability to say to people who were interested, you can do this without having to commit to our Rotary Club. You can do it in your own way. So in fact, most of our growth came because we added a satellite club. The reason we have a satellite club is the other piece, which is that we decided to go for a global grant for working in our community in Chinatown. We knew that they were going to need a lot of help. And we also wanted to think about doing a global project at home. We had a plan that came under economic community development, which was to help the businesses stay open and to help them pivot if they needed to a different business model. Project isn't really finished yet because we still have some money, which is because so many of the things we had budgeted for, people ended up giving to us. The outcome of all this is that by doing that global project and getting ourselves out of there in the community so that the business community really did know who Rotary was and what we did, it gave us validity, and it made people think, well, this is an organization that I want to participate with. And so when we said we would invite the people in the businesses to come to our meetings and to hear things we did. And when we said to them, why don't you consider becoming Rotarians? And they said, well, first of all, many of us don't speak English. And secondly, it's hard to come to a meeting on a regular basis. We said, well, you all can form a satellite club. And they did. And they speak Cantonese when they're by themselves. And they frequently come to our meetings. And of course, we go to their meetings, and we're doing projects together, and we're doing dinners together and fundraising events together. Our hope is, we say to them, you know, your goal, your charge is to get enough other people interested to spin off and be a separate club. They were like an infusion of energy and fresh blood into our club. I mean, they just they come with so much enthusiasm that it's made all of us a little more enthusiastic.
So, in summary, the 5 attributes of successful clubs are strong leadership, clear membership goals and a growth plan. They're active in their community, they're visible in their community, and they have active, intentional member engagement. So that's the end of the general presentation, which we would give at PETS. And then at that point, we would do breakout sessions with the presidents-elect, with facilitators, and they would identify maybe 2 or 3 of these attributes where there is an opportunity for their club to grow and share ideas, or come up with ideas on their own, and then share ideas in a group setting to help start to build a plan around how to help their club grow in membership in the following year. So the idea, of course, is each club is different. They're going to have different needs and different opportunities. So now, in closing, what I'd like to do is I'd like to thank certain people that have really had a lot to do with putting this program together. In particular, we have a zone analytics team that did the survey that we presented. The modeling with attrition and attraction was actually done in zone 33, which is the zone just south of us, the Middle Atlantic, and the leader of that was Terry Weaver. We have a learning team that put together the slides and the presentation that I just went through with you today, as well as the breakout sessions and everything. And then finally, I'd like to thank Liz Yates for all of her work in helping us put these videos together and these recordings and presentations. We are going to grow Rotary. So let's grow Rotary together. Thank you.